Hi, in this video, we are going to discuss about the lithography, the key process of semiconductor fabrication. As you can see, this is the clean room where semiconductors are fabricated. As you can see, there are you can see the two words called with classes. This is the amount of particles um, in the clean room. We are going to discuss about this later. This is the This is the clean room class. How the clean room classes are called. The with the 0.0 micrometers of particles, and within in the 1 square feet, the amount of the particles in the space is the key of the clean room classes. Uh, for example, if if there is if there are 100 zero point 0.5 micrometer particles in 1 square feet of a room, this is called 100 plus 100. Normally, the both clean rooms are built for 1,000 plus 1,000, and some fabrication process rooms. There are one class 100 and up to class one clean rooms. The smaller the numbers, the smaller the numbers, the cost for making the clean room is exponentially expensive. Because to keep the clean room, all entire clean room, the cleaning is really expensive. So we usually move the move the wafers in a special box that is called FOUP, front of unified pot, or easily full. This is a box where the with the small edges to keep the wafers in aligned, and there is a small hole to keep the air inside the food box clean. We'll talk about this later. This is how we enter the clean room. As you have seen the people inside the clean room, we need to wear the special gadgets to keep to not to make the particles and not to make any particles. Okay, let's move on to the actual lithography. As we have discussed earlier, there are two kinds of photoresist. This is the positive PR, that is when the light is exposed, the photoresist is broken. On the other hand, the negative photoresist, only the area where the light is exposed is harder to to leave after the after the uh, after the the other PRs are removed. As you can see, this is the reticle or photomask, where that is the key of the lithography. This is, as you can see, there are some micro the patterns. With the patterns, the pattern determines if the light goes through or not. This is with the patterns, the semiconductor devices are patterned. Normally, for nowadays, because making the photo mask as fine as the actual semiconductor, it's extremely hard to make the fine the fine photo mask. So nowadays the masks are actual the mask the pattern of the masks are actually bigger than the actual pattern for the semiconductor. We're going to talk about this later. This is the alignment key, as because nowadays there are we because nowadays we need to make the lithography process for several times. If the photo masks are not aligned, the actual pattern can be destroyed, or the pattern can be shorted or open circuit. So this is the alignment key, and because the alignment key can be printed a little bit smaller than the actual size, so the aligned keys for the former are usually thicker than the alignment keys for the vectors. This uh, this structure you can see is helical. This is like a protective cover for the actual photomask. The processes of photolithography varies widely for the actual products, but normally we start with the we usually start we always start with the wafer cleaning process. When the wafers are cleaned for the defect free or particle free, we because the silicon substrate itself has the natural oxide layer because of the oxygen gas in nature. So we need to remove the natural oxide layer. It is usually done by uh, hydrogen with fluoro hydrogen AC, and and the next stages they can be widely varied. Okay, let's move on to the exposure. For in school or for small laboratories, the photomasks are actually contacted with the wafers, so it's called the contact printing. The contact printing devices are actually much cheaper than the other exposure devices, but because the masks and the wafers are actually contacted, so the the photoresist can be stuck up to the mask, or the mask can like damage the photoresist or the wafer itself. So the productivity is actually poor. Moreover, because the pattern of the mask must be same as the actual pattern of the wafer. So the making of the mask for contact printing is relatively harder, or we cannot make the extremely fine pattern for the contact printing mask. To deal with the problems with contact printing, there is another printing mechanism that is called permissive printing. Uh, as you can see like this, the wafer and the mask is not contacted and with a little bit gap, but because of the gap, the light comes through the pattern of the mask, that is that can be scattered like this, and the resolution of the image is poorer than the contact printing, so it is actually not widely used nowadays. Last but not least, there is projection printing. This is most widely used in the actual for the actual companies. The well uh, the most thing is like similar to the promised printing. The mask and the wafer is not contacted, but as you can see, there is another lens system between the mask and the wafer. So the scattered light uh, can be focused again to make the clear image for the for the wafer. However, because it has far more devices inside the system, so the system itself is extremely expensive. Okay, for the projection printing system, because there are some optical systems inside the system, uh, and the key of the projection system is to make one die per one shot, rather than one shot for one whole wafer. So the wafer itself must 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 move after each shot. So moreover, because the lens system itself, the because of the opticals of lenses, the the images from the outside of the lens can be like distorted than the in the center of the lens. So we need to make so we actually make this little slot and the and move the slot and the wafer itself at the same time to make clearer image. And this is called a scanning system. As you can see, not only the wafers but also the lens itself moves back and forth to make one die. And after making a shot of one die, move the wafer for a for a little and begin begin shooting another die. Let's move on to the optical things, uh, the depth of focus and numerical aperture. The depth of focus is like the size of the size of the opening for the camera. If we close the camera system like this, the amount of light is smaller than the wide open camera. However, because the angle from the because the angle is wide wider than in the smaller aperture, smaller uh, smaller the amount of the depth for the focus is is uh is smaller in the wider camera system. Because nowadays the it is normal to make 3D structure for the semiconductor fabrication. The short depth of focus is is not great because we need to put the photoresist. So because we need to make the 3D structure of the we need to make 3D structures. One another thing is the numerical aperture. the numerical aperture is the n, the refractive index, and with the sine theta, the angle of the light. Uh, to make the finer image, it is called the critical dimension. To make critical dimension smaller, to make smaller feature size, we need to make wide, we need to make bigger numerical aperture. So the unlike the depth of focus, to make finer image, we need to open the angle wider, or as I will talk about this later, uh, we can also tune the lambda, the wavelength, or the k factors, which is the numerical factors for a lot of things. Because we need to tune the critical dimension as small as possible, and the lambda and geometric aperture is it cannot be tuned that easy. We sometimes put the we sometimes tune the refractive index. This is called the immersion lithography. Uh, uh, as you can see here, the number of n, the refractive n index, is higher than in the dry lithography. So with this technology, we can make even more finer image. To check the product after the lithography process, we usually see the scanning electron microscope, or also called SEM device. This is the one example of the SEM image. The at the tapered area, where the for the for the of the borders of the pattern, the the, the tapered area usually reflects more electrons than in the planar area. So this is turned into the image. Okay, let's move on to the light source. As as yet, as I have told you before, the lambda, the wave, the light wave, uh, the the wavelength can the wavelength should be narrower to make greater and finer image. And I'm going to tell you about the how to make the light. Normally, we use the ultraviolet ultraviolet light source to make the lithography. Uh, we usually make the the usual source of the ultraviolet is made from the mercury lamp, because mercury lamps usually spit out the ultraviolet light. But for more deep ultraviolet or extreme ultraviolet lithographic process, the laser process or plasma lighting process are usually used nowadays. For the most modern fabrication process, extreme ultraviolet fabrication processes are normally used. To make the extreme ultraviolet light, we need we we make the thin thin droplets into the device, and strike the droplet with the laser, and each each time the laser hits the bubble, the extreme ultraviolet laser is made, is produced and turned into the actual device, actual photolithography device. Because the extreme ultraviolet is is normally absorbed to air and most of the materials. So the inside of the device itself is vacuum is is normally vacuum, and each time the laser hits the glass system, the power of the intensity of the ultraviolet is smaller, like 70% of the in the in the amount. Unlike the unlike other systems, for EUV systems, the wafers are because the EUVs are usually absorbed even for the normal reticles. So we use the uh, like mirror like reticles rather than normal reticle because even with these systems, the amount of the UV lights are extremely small than from the first stage. We so the amount of the electricity it drives is extremely high, and as you can see, uh, the price of the device system, EUV system is extremely expensive. Let's move on to the photoresist. As I have as I have told you before, the photoresist is there's two types of photoresist. The negative photoresist and positive photoresist. For photoresist, there is gamma factor where the contrast the contrast ratio from the exposed and unexposed area. That is one of the key factor of the performance of photoresist. Because we need to make the spiral-like pattern rather than this planar-like pattern. So the high-end photoresist are considered are normally in high gamma. To make a coating layer for the wafer, we usually use the spin coating devices. That is, we put some photoresist on the center of the wafer and spin the wafer to make a uniform and thin layer over the wafer. And we after the spinning, we we soft bake the wafer like 100 degrees Celsius. The feature of photoresist are what are so widely broaded, like the viscosity or we need to tune the spin speed or the acceleration, spin time, and so on. And as you can see, if we have some defects or the spin speed is too high, spin time is too short, or the photoresist is too the amount of photoresist is too small, or even sometimes if the air bubbles are inside or with the photoresist, they can make the defect. Unlike the normal fabrication process, like like the display fabrication, we can because we cannot spin device the, the device itself because the well, especially for televisions, the size is too big to spin. we for the for these conditions we use the deep coating or spray coating mechanisms. Last but not least, I'm going to tell you about the defect. Now, even though nowadays, because the patterns of modern fabrication is extremely small that even for one dust particle can kill the entire die. But there is some kind of defects like non-killer defects that can make no difference because the defect is outside of the metal or another devices, or if if the defect is a little bit on the device, if there is potential defect that can make a that can make the device to last shorter, or or if the defect covers entire line or device or short the devices, there is the killer defect that kills the device itself. Last but not least, I'm going to tell you about the cleaning process because not to make the defect, we need to clean the we need to deep clean the wafer. We need to remove the organic defects, and we need to strip the oxide layer, the natural oxide layer, and we need to clean the ions that remains on the wafer.